Welcome to Bring Out Your Badass Self, a movement to break your negative thoughts and habits and instead focus on building each other up and encouraging fearless authenticity.
Each week, we will get vulnerable and share experiences alongside our guests and audience. Come rediscover your inner badass self.
Good morning. Welcome back, Cate.
Good morning. Oh, I'm glad to be here.
I know. We missed you.
Yes. I missed it too. It was kind of weird last week to watch the show after and rather than be in the show.
It was weird for me too. I was like, wait a minute. I don't have someone to interact with.
Yes.
It was like I was interacting with myself. Hey, Sarah, how you doing?
Right. You probably could have pulled it off if you needed to.
People would think I have split personalities.
Yes, exactly. Totally. Well, please, welcome BOYBAS crew. Please say hello to us. Let us know you're here. If this is your first time joining, if you could post a white heart. And then also, if you're new and if you're on Facebook, you'll need to go to another link, another URL, to give StreamYard permission to show your name. Otherwise, we don't know who you are. So if you go to StreamYard.com/Facebook, then you can give permission and we'll see who you are.
Perfect. We already have some people joining. So thank you again, Renee, for joining us. She said she missed us both. And so I know that Renee, I was definitely missing Cate last week. And so I appreciated seeing familiar faces like you and Stephanie. I know she wasn't able to join last week. She sent us a note. And so I'm glad to see you again today. And Kelly, good morning.
Morning.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And then we have Kim joining us. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
And then we also have Carrie. Thank God it's Friday.
Yes. This was kind of nice. I mean, yesterday I was like, okay, it's already Friday, because it's a short week, but so it's just snuck up on me.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't have the Monday and
no.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
And so, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I also want to thank someone, one of our individuals that follow us, that watch us, sent me this mug. And so, Cate, can you see that?
Yep. It says, never apologize for being a powerful fucking woman.
So she
it's got
said
my favorite word on it.
I know. So I think it was my daughter. Was it someone else? Yeah. I think she read it and I think she thought the word fucking was something else. I think she thought it because it's in cursive. And they're not teaching them cursive these days. And so I think she said she thought it was lovely. And so I'm like, it's the same thing.
Too.
Fucking woman, lovely woman.
Loving, fucking,
same thing.
Oh gosh. I love it.
Well, I want to let you guys know that next week's show is still in the works. So it will be a bit of a surprise. And my hope is that it all comes together. And so be sure to be on the lookout for that special episode announcement to learn what we're going to be talking about next week. But the week after, I'll go ahead and tell you what we're going to be talking about. So Cate and I are going to be talking about manifesting. Ooh. So I love that topic as well as today's topic. And then we also just want to get some more insight from you. What are other topics that you would like to see us cover, or what other people would you like us to bring on? Cate and I were actually sort of playing around with the idea of, we actually have some friends that are mediums. We were like, that would be an interesting individual to bring on. And so I was
Yeah.
curious about that, but we do have some others planned. We have one that'll be talking about discovering your viewpoint. Another person that'll be joining us to talk about why men view mental health as negative, and then another person to talk about encouragement. So those are some of the other ones that we're tentatively planning. Some of them are more in the works, and so we're curious to see what you guys think.
Yeah. Love this idea. So
Yeah.
just give us all your feedback, please. Let us know if you, um, or if you have a good topic that you might want to come on the show and talk about yourself. Let me know. Let us know.
Yeah.
Let's talk through it. So today we're going to take a little bit of a different approach than we normally do, because today's topic of intuition is one that Sarah is super passionate about. I'm going to just be kind of diving in, asking a lot of questions, learning more myself. So I was hoping that you guys would, learn right along with me, ask questions with me. Let's have some fun and really dig into Sarah's brain a little bit. Let's figure out what she knows about intuition and what we can do for it. So, or do with it. And first we have our song of inspiration. So let's play that first.
All right, perfect. Here we go. One thing just to note is that I want to thank Brock for all of the hard work that he has done with us previously.
Yes.
But Brock has started to go down a different path. He's actually been focusing on massage school. And so he came to me and let me know that he wouldn't be able to help moving forward. I'm super sad about that. But
Yeah.
I also understand that everybody has their own path. And so I actually connected with someone else. And so I'm curious to see what you guys think about today's song.
Like the wind is blowing, change is fast and growing. I knew better then, I knew better then. Words that hurt the one you're loving, hatred for who you're becoming. I knew better then, yes, I knew better then. To trust myself, to trust someone else, to trust the lies that slip from my mouth, to trust the heart I'm so quick to sell. Yes, I knew better then.
Yeah, and so I
love
think
it.
as we start to talk today, I think some of the lyrics that are in here, people will start to understand maybe a little bit more. But intuition really requires you to learn how to trust yourself. And there was actually a word in the lyric that we're going to be talking about today, and it's the word heart. So I want you to keep that in mind as we talk about the topic of intuition today.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Should we just, before we dive in a little further, should we answer Carrie's question about
Yeah.
just however you want to get us ideas?
Yeah. So she
We'll
was
work it.
asking, do we want, to email directly? If it's more in depth, then yeah, email us. But if you think it's a simple topic, then go ahead and post it here too.
Yep. Yep. All right. So let's dig in. Oh, and for those of you that usually ask, that was Sarah's voice. That was Sarah
Oh.
singing, and the new production guy did all the background, and I thought it was really well done. Maybe not as great as Brock, but pretty close. I'm on Team Brock. I can't
I hear
change
you.
that.
I know.
Yeah. So, Blackbird will forever be on my playlist.
Yeah.
All right. So let's dig in. Intuition. Sarah, what is intuition?
Well, first let's start maybe with just the dictionary definition of intuition, and then we'll get into what it really is. And so the dictionary definition is the ability to understand something instinctively without the need of conscious reasoning. But for me, intuition is really just inner knowledge. It's simply that.
Okay. Okay. So is it like a gut feeling?
Well, actually, intuition is really a heart feeling. And I know that sounds weird. Um, and it's funny because science actually deems it a mind phenomenon, but
Okay.
it actually has nothing to do with the mind.
Okay. So what do you mean by that? Tell me more.
Yeah. Well, so maybe let's talk about what intuition isn't first.
Okay.
And so when you think about a gut feeling, as you said, that a lot of times has to do with fear. So let's say that you have had something happen to you. Let's say that you were driving down the road and you had a car accident at this particular location. So the next time you come there, you might have a feeling, oh, well, um, I might get into a wreck again. Well, that is a
Mhm.
gut feeling. That is something that's based on experience. It's based on your mind and your feelings and emotions telling you something might happen. That's not intuition. Another example that isn't intuition is we were talking about earlier the mediums. So I've actually had premonitions where I was in a car and I was going up a hill and I was with a bunch of girlfriends, and all of a sudden I saw a flash of a white car coming up and it hit me in the back of my car. And then I looked in my rearview mirror and that car wasn't there.
Hmm.
So I was like, well, that's weird. So I kept going up and I'm waiting to get up to the stop sign. And right as I'm getting to the stop sign, I look in my rearview mirror and there's that white car coming up and slams into me. I get
Wow.
out. I'm like freaking out because I'm like, you don't understand. I saw this before it happened. That is actually an example of a download. So what that is that
Okay.
could be source, it could be your spirit guides. It's information that's being given to you that is outside of yourself, but it's giving you an expansive view in your mind that can maybe give you clarity. It gives you a bigger picture, and so that
Okay.
is another example of what intuition isn't. So I think it's
Okay.
important to sort of understand that sometimes people, whenever they have a feeling about something, a lot of times it's based upon an emotion, it's based upon fear or anxiety, and that actually isn't intuition. So I don't know if you've had things like that before that sort of resonate with what isn't intuition.
I think so. So this so this time that I had with my aunt, so there's a time in my childhood where I actually was meeting an uncle for the first time.
Mm,
So my parents, well, because my birth mom died at one, that side of the family, my mother's side of the family, um, was kind of like they were annoyed that my dad got married so fast.
mhm,
I think that was just how they were grieving, whatever, So I can remember like meeting them like around, 8 or 9, and we had spent some time with them. It was my little brother and myself, and we would go and spend time with just my grandparents. And I had met my aunts um, right around the same time, but I had not met this uncle
mhm.
that I did not know. So I met him a couple years later, um, and he had come to my grandparents' house, and I just kind of instantly knew that I didn't like this guy, and
Mm.
that I didn't want anything to do with him.
That actually sounds like intuition.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
so intuition, well, it depends. So intuition is emotionally neutral, and what I mean
Okay.
by that is that intuition is, about the heart versus the mind, and
Okay.
so we've actually learned, when we're younger, we have learned to think with our minds. We're told to actually not listen to our heart, to not listen to our intuition. But what you're talking about is actually a great example of a lot of times kids have a really great innate intuition, but they're then told, don't believe that, or
Right.
believe an adult, those types of things. And so um, many don't know this, but our heart is actually our inner core of our body. And what I mean by that is NASA has actually studied electromagnetic fields that emanate energy beyond our physical body, and our inner core is actually our heart. So whenever they study this, they see that it's actually coming from our heart. And so even Heart Math has done some studies, and they have
Okay.
shown that people feel intuition and their heartbeat even changes. And so that is why when people say, I don't know why I feel this way, I just know I feel this way, it's because your feelings and your emotions are in your mind, whereas intuition is in your heart. And that's why, as a child, you had that feeling of something is wrong
Yeah.
and you shouldn't be next to that individual. So when we focus on clearing our heart chakra, it is really about bringing in love. We can actually build our intuition. And I think the biggest thing to understand is that our egos and our mind get in the way of really allowing us to be able to trust our intuition. And for me, it isn't lost on me that the heart chakra is about love, and that's why intuition is really tied to our hearts. And so,
That's really
you know,
cool.
yeah. And so this is why we really should be careful about telling our kids to hug someone or telling them, always listen to adults, because sometimes they have an inner knowing that tells them otherwise. And we actually do this by really listening to our higher self. And I know that a lot of people don't really know what higher self is, but it's ultimately our soul. Our soul is our higher self, and actually, it actually provides us information to our heart. What's funny is that we get this information to our heart, and then it routes to our brain. And
Okay.
so, people that study chakras, they know that each of those are tied to each other, but this information comes first to our heart. And so you'll notice,
From our soul.
yep, to our
Okay.
heart. Our soul is our inner, is our higher self,
Okay.
and the intuition is our inner knowing. And so when you get this information, it'll be nonverbal. And so when you start to really hone in on your intuition, you'll notice it'll come to you and you will just know it versus feeling it. So we
Okay.
have to remember our intuition won't be wrapped up in those emotions and the feelings, which is typically our ego. And it doesn't mean we don't have emotions or feelings after we know, because that's when the fear and the anxiety really step in.
Okay. So there's a lot there to kind of
There
unpack.
is. Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, it's nonverbal. And what I found really interesting is you also said there's no like emotion tied to it. It's
Hmm.
just a knowing. So but what if what you know so so but the knowing can cause an emotion or it can cause
Yes,
a thought, right? So
absolutely.
like it's kind like it might be kind of hard to like distinguish, right? Like
It absolutely is, yeah. And so a lot of times, if you feel, um, that your intuition is speaking to you, it's first just asking, okay, do I have is this a feeling I have? Or is this just something I just know and I can't even wrap around why it is that I feel this way or know this? And I know that
okay.
my mom is actually, she actually posted something. She said, it seems to be genetic with you, Carrie, and me. And I would actually say my dad as well. And so Carrie and I have talked about this a lot, my sister, and her and I have talked about intuition a lot, and she even has situations as well that she's like, I know it, and then I didn't trust my intuition, and I knew that's what I should have done. And you and I have talked about that as well. A lot of times it's just knowing, but then you have those factual people that come at you and say, well, that doesn't sound logical, but that's
Right.
because they're in their head and they're not in their
Mm-hmm.
heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So wait, let's go back to the heart though.
Yeah.
I find it really fascinating that your heartbeat changes. Like, so,
Mhm.
you know, I love the type of stuff that is sometimes kind of like out there, but still connected back to science in some way,
Yes.
right? So like that, I would love to like explore that a little bit further. So like they did a study, and they could tell that when somebody was feeling an intuition, that actually caused these like physical changes.
Yep, exactly. And
Wow.
so it was studies where they would take a look at the person's heart, and as they were feeling intuition, and that's actually one of the things that I'll talk about here in a minute that really has to do with how you can know about
Okay.
intuition. And I'm going to pull up a couple of other comments. Oh, those are ideas
Okay.
related to that. And so. Um, Sorry, I was reading one of the one
Your
of the
mom.
messages, and that sort of made me laugh, and so
Eh,
and so maybe I can give you a couple of examples of intuition.
yeah, yeah, that'd be great. Like,
Alright.
yeah.
And so intuition, provides you information that you need to know in the moment. And the best way that I can give an example of this is that let's imagine that you are doing you remember the painting by numbers book where you
Yeah.
would have painting and it would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yep.
and you would paint that. Well,
Yep.
normally I would give you that book and it would have all the numbers, and you would have a picture of that book and you would know exactly what it's supposed to look like. Well,
Mhm.
that's not intuition. Intuition's going to give you the the information or the little cell that you need to fill in, and it's going to say paint in number 5 for this one thing. I'm giving you the 5, but it hasn't given you all of the other things. And
Okay.
so intuition is really about giving you a piece of information. It's not about giving you a whole map of all the things that you need to know. It's giving you a piece of information that you need to know in that moment. Whereas downloads, as we talked about a minute ago, sometimes it
Mhm.
gives you like the full picture. Intuition is more the piece of information you need to know in this moment. It doesn't mean that you don't know, because your heart actually knows the full
Mhm.
picture. It's just that it hasn't told your mind yet. So when we're listening to our intuition, it's really our mind listening to our heart, and it's giving us that one piece of information that we need to know in that moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and the download, that can be like a premonition, like what happened to you with the car,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And
Okay.
so that's more of a download. So a lot of times that's more, for me, it's more from source, it's more outside, it's a spirit guide, or it's, someone that's giving me information that I need to know versus me knowing. So I think the key to understand is that intuition is your inner knowing. It's your higher self, also your heart telling you this is the direction you need to take versus an outside influence trying to help guide you. And sometimes your outside guides will come through people you know. Like they'll give you a piece of information that you didn't know. But that's not intuition. That's not you knowing. That's not you
Okay.
understanding that this is what where it is that you need to the piece of information that you need to know at that moment.
Okay. Okay. So, um, how do we like build this more? How do you like, if you don't feel like you're a very intuitive person,
Yeah.
um, or maybe you were, like for me, I feel like I had some stronger intuitions when I was younger, and
Yeah.
I feel like as I've gotten older, it's gotten a little muddy. So like,
Yeah.
what can I do to kind of build that up a little bit, or be able to kind of trust myself more? Um,
Yeah.
Yeah. And just, like, I'd love to be able to feel like this inner knowing and be able to like act on it with confidence, right?
Yeah. And I think the word that you just used was I would love to be able to do that. And part of it is first meditating and quieting and removing ourselves from the distractions during the day.
Yeah.
Because our heart is speaking to us, not our mind. And if we aren't listening to that, because we're so focused on all the things within our mind, we first have to really focus on quieting it, removing that noise in our head. And I actually think that my daughter does this on the trampoline. So I think it's important that people understand that meditate doesn't necessarily mean saying there and going, sure, it might, that works actually for me. But for some people, meditation, it's really about just opening the mind and getting rid of the crap that we have in our mind every day. For me, it's really focusing and breathing. So that
Yeah.
would really be step number one. Now,
Okay.
number two would be um, to ask a question. So if we're trying to get an answer from our intuition, the biggest thing that I see is people are attached to an answer. So they're feeling like, oh, I want it to be this answer.
Uh-huh.
Remember that it's nonverbal, it's non-emotional. So we first have to remove that attachment to the answer. So that is really our ego getting in the way, and we need it to be neutral. So one
Okay.
way of doing this is just even stating in our question, I remove my ego and ask that my inner self help me understand
Hmm.
what is my next step in life. And I actually did this. So last year, during 2022 at the beginning, I was really struggling. I was like, I was getting a feeling, and some people know this, some people don't. I was actually getting a feeling that maybe I shouldn't be in where I was at. That
Hmm.
maybe my path was to not be in the business that I was in.
Yeah.
And I was actually thinking about leaving. And so I really spent time with my intuition, just saying, okay, I need for you to tell me what is the right path for me. Like where am I supposed to go? So I'm not connected one way or the other. I just need to know, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? I can tell that I'm supposed to be doing something else, but it took a long time. And I think that's also important, is that your answers won't come immediately. Sometimes they'll come in seconds, sometimes maybe in a couple of
Okay.
days. Sometimes you might need to go down some other paths first. So your intuition is telling you. And part of what I needed was it was like you're asking the wrong question. And so whenever I wasn't getting my answer, I was like, okay, so what other questions, what do I need to know? So I was like, okay, what other information do I need to know about my path? And my path was like, I needed to resolve some things within the business to be able to continue to be happy with what it is I was doing. But it also was telling me, you have another path. And it was doing this with you, that it saw the benefit of, no, you need to stay on the path of where you're at, because it's going to help grow you as a person, but you're also going to have this other path to be able to help other people. But I needed both in order to really demonstrate the things, the struggles that I go through, and the things
Hmm.
that I do also to help people. So I think that sometimes we ask the wrong question, and we got to make sure we're removing our ego out of it.
Okay. Okay. So again, a lot to unpack. So you first, one of the first things you do, like if you want to think of this, like sometimes I like to think of things in like a tactical step, especially if it's like something I don't quite understand.
Mhm.
So, um, so meditating,
Yeah.
so really clearing your mind or being able to be mindful. And I love what you said about like how you think Riley does this on the trampoline, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's been, I think that's kind of for a lot of people an interesting take on meditation. And it's one that I've actually become more comfortable with recently too, because I've always struggled to meditate. And I've kind of like, my dad can meditate like this. Now he's practiced for years and years
Right.
and years. He has a daily meditation practice, and he can just slip right into a Zen state and meditate for as long as he wants to, and he does it daily. I've always struggled to do that, but I have found that motion, like spinning or swinging or or rocking,
Mhm.
um, really helps me kind of zone out, as I would say it. So,
Yeah.
so I guess I want to mention this because, to our audience, like, don't feel like if you aren't good at doing the like, you can meditate in other ways and it can be helpful.
Yeah.
So like as you're meditating then, so you like clear your mind, you're focusing, then you ask yourself, or you to get your ego out of
Yeah.
it, right? So that sounds kind of almost like an affirmation in a way, or like,
Mhm.
I mean, but you're literally saying like, okay, time for my ego to not be involved in this. I need
Right.
to just ask my inner self a question.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you literally phrase the question. And then sadly, I've just found out that you don't always get the question right away. So
No.
you or you don't always get the answer right away, right? So how you go back to, like, you'll know when it's there, because you'll
Yep.
just know,
You'll
right?
just know. Like, you don't know why you just know.
You just know.
And the other thing that I would say is that if remember that if you are feeling something and you're feeling fear, let's say that you think you know, but you're still learning how to trust your intuition and then you immediately go to fear. So let's say that your intuition is telling you you shouldn't be in a relationship or you should go to another
Okay.
job. The immediate feeling might be fear. And
Okay.
so you have to say, okay, why am I feeling the fear? And so answer that question, try to remove the fear from the situation, then go back to, okay, now how do I feel about this situation? And you will start to feel or you'll just know like no I really need to get out of this relationship or no this really is but if you're not getting a clear answer then you're not that's not your intuition telling you that's still your
Okay.
emotions that's still your feeling like it and whenever I came to you about this idea I was like I knew it I was like this is what we're supposed to be doing
Right.
and I just knew
Yeah.
it and I sent it and I was like hey and then you were like oh yeah
Yeah,
there was
this
no
is it.
questioning. It was like, this is what we're supposed to be doing.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Now, fear is often felt like in the gut, right?
It
Like in your
is.
stomach. So like
Sure.
that could be a good kind of differentiator a little bit, because if you are feeling like you're having an intuition but it's really kind of hitting you somewhere else in your body, maybe? Is that
Yeah.
accurate to say?
It is, and I think that that's why some of the previous shows are so important because you also have to clear some of the fear and your triggers and all of those types of things in order to really get to your intuition. Because if you're still
Right.
living out of fear or you're still living, which is really your lower vibration, and you're still living in that, then you're a lot of times you're not able to listen to your heart because
Right.
you're still have all of this other stuff that is bothering you, so you are
Okay.
worried about all of those things. So that's why the previous things that we talked about are so important that dealing with your inner self,
Your inner
all of
critical
those
voice.
yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Because those are the things that get in the way of you being able to listen to your inner self.
Okay. Okay. So, so what do you do? So then you kind of have this knowing, right? The intuition
Mhm.
comes, you have this knowing. There's not a lot of emotion associated with it, but then it can cause emotions or kind of impact things. But what do you do when your intuition then tells you something?
So I think the first thing to really think about is give yourself some time to sort of act upon it. Sit with that information and learn how your body just felt in that
Oh,
moment and learn. to be able to trust that feeling. And so this goes back into that song of trusting yourself and also trusting that it felt, you felt it from your heart. And I think trust is the biggest challenge that people have, is that they've been conditioned so much over the years not to trust their intuition in things that they then it gets lost, it gets muddled. And so first, when you have this feeling, sit with it and say, okay,
Okay.
how did that feel? Where did that come from? And if you feel that it's just coming to you, it's just knowing, then move forward with it, and then see how it is that you continue to progress with that. And I think the biggest thing is that it's not logical a lot of times. And I do think that a lot of times in it's like, okay, why am I getting this information? And then also learn to feel your heart. So since your heart can actually, it can be felt, as you are getting that, sort of even feel your heart as you're getting the information, and see if you're feeling like that little fluttering feeling, as you are feeling it, or
Like a
as you.
flutter, like butterfly, or like excitement.
Yeah, it's like, it's just, I it really does feel like a flutter in your heart
Okay. Okay.
whenever you get it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of body awareness
Mhm.
involved in intuition, right? That
There
could be
is.
where I'm falling down. As I'm just learning to like be in tune with my body a little bit. So,
So,
okay.
Leslie posted something. Let me,
Yeah.
post that. It's long, so hang on one second. So, my mom has a gift that she can't tap into. When she has a dream that she is speaking to a person, who has passed away, her mom died a long time ago, that, then someone she knows in real life will pass away. When she has a dream that someone passes away, someone she knows in real life is pregnant. Um, maybe it was, when
Pregnant.
someone was
Yeah.
pregnant.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is considered to be intuition because she is asleep when it happens, but it's always accurate. Maybe she's psychic. Um, I think that, sometimes your higher self will speak to you in dreams, but I also think that spirit guides also will speak to you within it. And so, I mean, ultimately, that's just pure intuition. Either way, when it's coming to you, either of those ways, it's a download, either a download of information from someone outside, or it's your higher self trying to help you to understand. But in those situations, probably an outside. And it's funny that you say that, Leslie, because I have a coworker here, that I had a dream that all three of her daughters were pregnant. But I could feel intuition wise, it was telling me it was the middle child. And so I told her, I was like, hey, by the way, I think one of your girls is going to be pregnant. And she was like, oh, Lord. And I said, and I feel like it's the middle child. And she was like, well, that wouldn't surprise me. And so then, like, a couple months later, she hadn't told anybody yet, and she came back to me and she's like, I have to tell you. She was like, the middle child is pregnant.
Wow.
And I've had those different things
Yeah.
happen to me even in other dreams as well. And so,
I
yeah.
think we could do a whole couple of sessions or episodes on dreaming, because it is really interesting, and there is all sorts of science and theories around dreaming that are fun to tap into. Jenna, my wife, is really into dreaming, and
Mhm.
she dreams. She like predicts the future in her dreams. Um, and she has ever since she was little, and sometimes it takes years for it to happen, but she will like walk into a place and all of a sudden be like, okay, I dreamt about this. And she has a really great memory, so she can be like,
Yeah.
no, I dreamt about this when I was 8 years old. Like, I remember that dream, and this is what I saw. And she'll like, you know talk about it.
Yeah.
So I think,
And she
there
had
are
that
some
with
people.
even, the baby that she was the surrogate for. She
Yes.
was like, "There's a baby coming into our lives." And you're
Yep.
like, "Okay, I don't know how that, how that's
I'm like,
happening." And then all of a
because we've got
sudden, it was
6.
that person. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, and, one of our kiddos, Brandon, communicated with her before she had him, there's so she felt him coming, she felt him wanting to be on this earth, and she was, in the midst of wanting to divorce, at the time, her husband, at the time, so
Right.
yeah, so very.
I'm gonna pull up Leslie. She said her
Yeah,
mom
this is
just
so
predicted
cool. So
I'll
I
show
wanna
you.
I wanna go to coffee with your mom, Leslie.
And then I
That's so
wanna
cool.
just note, so thank you, Bruce, for joining us. He's a newer attendee, so thank you so much. I understand, life gets in the way, so I appreciate you joining us.
Life and work, right? Sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nice to meet you, Bruce.
Yeah.
Okay, so this
Um,
flutter feeling, right?
yeah.
Okay.
And before we
So
go there, anybody else, any other questions that you might have about intuition or any other
yeah.
examples that you guys have?
Yeah, that's where I was going. Like, does it feel the same for those of you that feel like you have leveraged intuition in the past? Do you
Mhm.
feel this like flutter feeling, or have you experienced some of what Sarah is talking about, or do you have any like questions or examples? Because we love those as well.
I would give another example is, um, car wrecks. I don't know why it is that both my sister and I have talked about this growing up, that we just had it was just like, we're gonna be in a
Uh,
car wreck.
oh
And,
wow.
and Carrie had this happen when she even had the person, like, slow down, as they were coming back, and they still ended up in a car wreck. And it
She
was
was a
because
passenger.
she was a passenger, and she even had the other person slow down, but they hit a patch of ice and they ended up, spinning out. And I've had these same types of things as well, where it's just, like, oh my gosh, this is about to happen. And so it on and for me, that is just it's just a knowing. It's like, oh crap, this is about to happen. It wasn't anything in particular, like nothing was happening in the moment. So it wasn't an emotion that was coming over me that was like,
It was
oh,
just a
I
right.
feel like this is about to happen. It was oh crap, this is about to happen. And
This
then
is gonna
then I'm
happen.
sort
Yeah.
of on high alert because I'm like, why did I feel that way? And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
Carrie said that my mom and I often pick up the phone at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so calling each other. I think that my sister had an intuition to call me whenever I was going through my challenges in high school, that was
Yeah.
an intuition for her. And I know that my dad also had experienced this as well. He used to go out for coffee every morning. That was sort of like his ritual in what he did. And he went out to coffee one morning, and, part of this could be gut instinct. But a guy came in, and for whatever reason, he was just like, hmm. He was like, I feel like I need to get out of here. And so he paid for his coffee and he got out. And then lo and behold, the next day, he found that that guy had actually held up the place. And so it was just his intuition saying, hey, you know what? You probably shouldn't be here.
Yeah. It's not safe.
Yeah. And so Carrie said that to call each other, would that be intuition or coincidence? My mom recently passed away, and when I'm missing her a lot, a cardinal shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's a lot of times really just it can be spirit guides. So a lot of times cardinals, or I see that as well. It's funny, my daughter, when she was younger, and I hadn't taught her this, there were two cardinals outside, and she knew my dad's brother had also passed away. And he had passed away, and she was like, oh look, it's Grandpa and Ricky. And I was like, what? What did you say? And I
And
thought
she
that
was
that
little,
was,
like.
yeah, when she was little, she was just like, "Oh, look, it's Grandpa and Ricky."
Yeah. Cardinals, I mean, this happens, Jenna, on Mother's Day, we've lost 3 mothers. I've lost 2, and Jenna lost her mom, and she was incredibly close with her mom and was sitting outside thinking about her, and literally a cardinal came up. And we don't usually see cardinals in our backyard. We see them frequently in our front, but it was kind of really cool. But I think like sometimes things we might brush things off as coincidence, right? Like what Carrie is saying, but maybe it is intuition sometimes, especially if it's connected to something else, right?
Yeah, I think
Like if
that
it's someone
intuition,
else involved.
yeah, like if you, for whatever reason, you feel like you need to, you know what, I need to call my mom. And so that could be intuition, speaking to you, that maybe one of you need, maybe you guys need to reconnect, or you need to talk to each other for whatever reason. She also had another thing. So I also had a dream. My cousin was going through a hard time. When I talked to her next, she shared she had a marital problem and ended up divorcing. So weird. And I don't mean to hog the chat. So no, we appreciate
No.
it, Carrie.
Love
And
it.
so I think that a lot of information comes to us in dreams as well. It's not necessarily intuition. Um, but I still think that it's information that is being given to us from, could be our higher self, or from spirit guides. And I know that it's probably weird for a lot of people. For me, it's just sort of natural because of some of the people that I surround myself with, to say words like spirit guide. What does that mean? I feel like our souls are just using our bodies for this experience. And so each of us have different souls, and our souls continue on, whether it's in another universe, or other planets. And so I this is what I have come to believe, is that we have spirit guides that look over us. I feel that my dad also is someone who looks over me. Sometimes I can even smell him, like for whatever reason I smell his cigarette smoke. So I know that he is here. He was a smoker. And so it's just something that you learned, that as you become a little more in tune with yourself and with different things, you start to pick up other things that you just can't really explain, but you just know that are true.
Yeah.
Renee said, it took me a long time to trust my intuition. I used to ignore it, which eventually led to regret. I agree with this so much. And I
Yeah.
think part of the problem is, I think an important thing that we didn't talk about, Cate, is, I hate to always put things in sometimes men versus women, but I do feel like women are more innate in intuition, because we end up really listening to our heart in a lot of ways. And we are much more in tune. And it was interesting. There was another study that actually found that when they studied it with the brain, that when they were looking at how women connected information, especially related to intuition, they found that it had white matter. So it was connecting not only information, so that information coming from our heart into our brain, it was connecting information, and they were able to see white matter. But when they did it for men, they were seeing gray matter. And so I do feel that intuition is more of a feminine type of feeling. It's more feminine energy. That's why I think my dad had some feminine energy, and so that's why he was in tune with his intuition. And so let's see what Bruce said. I'm not sure what exists as far as how we receive information, but I believe for there to be inspiration, intuition, or instinct, I feel that in time we will come to see and understand where these come from and how they actually work. Yeah. And so I loved also reading the science behind some of the intuition, because they're trying to understand it. But it really, for me, has to do with energy. It has to do with, I know it's new words for people, but chakras, in the energy that is around us. And I'll give you an interesting thing to sort of test. So if you put your hands together and you do this, do you feel any energy like tingling in your fingers? I immediately feel tingling in my fingers without even touching my other hand. And so I'll do this with my daughter as well. I'll take my hand and I will have her just feel like I'll put it on a piece of body and I'll say, tell me where this is at. And it's to build up also the energy field or the energy feeling of knowing where that energy is touching you. Because what they've actually found for most people, energy fields are about, a foot to 3 feet of your energy. So that's why when you're around other people, you can pick up their energy. So people that are very sort of empathic, and people that haven't also built up their ability to sort of protect themselves as well. That's why a lot of times empaths will bring in negative feelings or negative energy from other people. But that's also where intuition, it's just a knowing that something is wrong. And so I have one other example that I can give you.
Okay.
My ex-husband, when we were married, he had an aunt that started dating this gentleman. And I met him and I had an instant knowing. I was like, there's something wrong. I'm like, he's not abusing kids, but he's abusing, I feel like he's going to abuse her. I just had an inner knowing. Like I had no information about this person. And people would be like, wow, that's really judgmental. But it was just an inner knowing. And it was 3 months later that I ended up finding out he was beating her. And I was just like, see? And it's those types of things that when you feel those things, just keep them, and maybe even tell one other person, and then just see, does the data then come back to sort of prove your intuition? And that's when you start to remember how that felt. And then you will continue to build upon your intuition.
Yeah. Very cool. I think I had something similar to like that happen when I was a kid as well. One of my aunts had gotten married and I just instantly thought that I didn't like the guy, that I just thought there was something wrong with him. And I wasn't interested in hugging him. I just needed to keep distance from him. And then turned out he was not a good guy. He was kind of like a con man. He had made up a bunch of, his history. And so I felt like
how did that feel? How did you,
it was, I just remember knowing, and I remember then sticking to my guns because I remember my aunt at the time being kind of frustrated because we had a close relationship and she was kind of frustrated that I wasn't taking to this new person that she was so happy with.
Right.
But I just knew. And so then, but knowing, I remember being able to be like, no, like I'm not going to, I'm not gonna, because I know that I don't want to. So I think, it was just this knowing. And I think I'm fortunate that my parents really did, like they supported those types of things, like the time with that uncle when I met him and I was really uncomfortable, my dad drove up and got me, like there was times when I would express those things to my mom would be the same way. Like, no, you just know, what you know.
You just know what you know. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing, the takeaway for me, or I hope to impart for people, is when you feel like you know something, just trust it and just sort of sit on it, see how it felt, and then let it, wait out and see what ends up coming. Because
Yeah.
once you see that you didn't trust your intuition, it's those moments that are the training moments that are like, that's how it felt, and I didn't trust it. And as Renee
Yeah.
was saying, I regret it now. Now I'm learning. It's learning from those mistakes. Oh, there it was. It was telling me.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think sitting with a question and giving yourself space to answer it is key. I think that's something that I could definitely do more of.
Mm.
I tend to be analytical or impulsive, or just, and maybe my intuition is driving my impulse, because I don't feel like I make a lot of wrong decisions by any means. But I think maybe taking the time to really consider intuition as a part of the factor, right? So like just
Yeah.
giving yourself the space to meditate and then ask these questions to your higher self and find out what really drives you.
Yeah. And I think it's realizing that it may not come immediately. Like there may be
Yeah.
another question that you're really supposed to, or a different path you're supposed to take first before you get to this question that you're asking. So sometimes it can be like, okay, well, tell me, show me or provide to me what information I'm supposed to be knowing next. And just being open to what it is that it gives to you.
Yeah. It seems like a more kind of strategic way to handle your events in your life, like to ask for more direction, like
Mm-hmm.
to see more information rather than just like making a choice based on what you're experiencing in the physical sense right now. Like,
Yeah.
I, well, I'm going to do this because this is what I want.
Right.
But putting a
Yeah.
little bit more, I don't know, effort and just kind of thought and giving yourself the space to make a decision that really really truly resonates with you.
Yeah, and I think the other key thing to remember is that it has to do with the heart. Heart is about love. Heart is about removing ego, which is super hard. Believe me.
Yeah.
The other day, someone said something online, and I had to put my ego aside. I was like, okay, approach this in a different way. Like approach this with love. And that's then also where your intuition can come into play. And it's like, okay, instead of being upset about, the things that this person is saying, instead ask, hey, how are things going? And so that's what I did. And then, it's
Mhm.
opening up that conversation. And then I didn't even approach, that particular topic with them.
Yeah. But you
Because
removed your ego from the situation.
exactly. And I was like, all
Mhm.
right, and sometimes you got to continuously remind yourself, remove your fucking ego.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
focus on love, focus on
Yep.
opening up and being kind to others. And that's where I find that whenever I do that, my intuition just continuously provides me more information.
Yeah. My therapist likes to remind me to be curious. Like if
Hmm.
something happens, something out of my control, but someone is clearly feeling a certain emotion,
Yeah.
rather than reacting,
Yeah.
to instead be curious to figure out. So it sounds kind of like that's what you did. You were like, okay, clearly this is upsetting, but instead of being upset, I can redirect and I can ask what's going on and then have a completely different conversation, one
Yeah.
that, doesn't necessarily upset you in the end. So
Absolutely.
think about that in terms of just getting curious as well.
Yeah.
And you can look at intuition as a way to get curious too, like curious as to what actually really feels right for you. I love this kind of practice that you're describing for us all, of like meditating, purposely removing your ego and
Mhm.
asking yourself a question and waiting for an answer.
Yeah. Well, Kate, we're already at the end of our time. Sometimes I just wonder how it is that we can talk for an hour and feel like we've only spoken for like 10 minutes.
I know. It's like, yeah, I know, it's crazy. It's crazy how fast it goes.
Yeah. All right. Looks like we have another item, so we'll take a look at this. Sometimes our driving force to be polite puts out the fire that's screaming, "Get out of this situation now and don't trust that person." Oh, man.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true, right? There are
It
times
really
when you,
is.
yeah, so you have to be able to set aside some of that. So it's not just, yeah, it's not just your ego, right? It's like what you were expecting people to, what you think people are expecting of you, what you think they want you to do
Right.
in that situation, right?
Yeah, and sometimes when our intuition is talking to us, it actually takes a lot of courage to do what it is it's telling you, especially if
Yeah.
it's telling you, like, take a path that is not the path you're on right now, which is completely changing what it is that you're doing. It can be scary, and so
Yeah.
sometimes you really do have to just, "Okay, I'm gonna trust it. I'm gonna do it," and take a leap of faith.
Yep.
That's scary.
Yeah, it sure is.
And so we'll end
Well,
on
thanks,
this.
Renee.
Yeah, she has to jump to a meeting, but she said, "Thanks for being the best badasses I know." And so,
Thanks, Renee. On that note, I hope this all can fuel your Friday. I hope you're feeling your badassery, and that you can go on and have an awesome weekend, an awesome week next week. Thank you so much for joining us.
yeah, and be sure to find out what our next show is going to be, our surprise show. So be
Yes,
sure to look for that announcement as well.
awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sarah.